lakes that came through here. They evolved into these big luxury liners with estate rooms and excellent food, entertainment, orchestras. Two of them actually had pipe organs built right in the hull of the ship. These beautiful luxury liners to take people to these exotic places. Now, when they came in here, I have all these cards and letters, especially from the 1870s, of these luxurious ships coming into Mackinaw Island. And people got off these beautiful luxurious ships and they looked around this exotic place. And they got back on the ship. Food was better, entertainment was better, the beds were more comfortable, the service was better. What do? We got to have a network of brand. How long do you think it took these people to figure out we need a network of brand destinations to take these people to get them out of the hot, dirty cities? If they don't exist, the transportation companies had to create them. Private money tried to build us as early as 1882. Railroad arrived, 1882, Mackinaw City. A fellow that had one of these summer cottages up here, ex-state representative Francis B. Stockbridge, was friends with George Pullman, the railroad car guy. He said, you better get a hotel here. There's a terminus of a railroad. You think you got a bunch of steamship people coming there. You wait till these railroads start arriving. You know, a little place like Mackinaw City would be so lucky to have a train or two a day. When we were open peak season, 16 to 18 trains a day would arrive there. Some of those three of those big steamships would come here. Private money was not going to build it. They built this away from the national park, which was the second national park after Yellowstone in 1875. Finagled 6.3 acres away, made plans to build this hotel. He did not. Time passed. Summer after summer, the transportation companies are frustrated. Every summer that passes, they're losing a whole income, a whole season's income by having to take them to other places. What do we have going for us here? Again, clean water, clean air. Biggest thing, getting out of the city. We had the fort, we had the fact we were the second national park and then the first state park in Michigan in 1895. We had Native Americans here. Probably one of the biggest attractions, though, was the John Jacob Astor connection. We don't look at it today, but John Jacob Astor got his start here after the War of 1812. By 1822, the American Fur Trading Company did $3 million worth of fur trade in this little island. Now, by this time, the Astors owned about half of New York City. Their name was infamous with this unlimited wealth. People were curious where they got their start. Those warehouses down on Market Street, I think you go by them on your carriage tour, I don't know if they tell you this, but they converted those over to a hotel to capitalize on this Astor fascination. It's called the Astor House Hotel. It existed until 1944. And my favorite thing about the Astor House Hotel is I have cards and letters from there. And people loved it. They had an excellent orchestra down there. But every time it rained, guests noted that it smelled like wet beaver pelts in there. Not too good. Transportation companies were frustrated. Mr. Stockbridge bought this property in late 1980 or 1886, made plans to build this hotel. What they were asking to have this hotel built was the most unreasonable thing in the world. Normally, it would take about 9 to 11 months to build a hotel this size. They wanted this hotel open and running for the season of 1887. It was in the fall. You can't build here in the winters. The winters are brutal. The best they could hope for was to bring the materials over in the fall, namely the wood, pile it up, stack it up, let it set through the winter in the snow, bring an army of workers in the spring, and have this hotel open for the July season. The original hotel was 200 rooms. It would normally take about 9 to 11 months to build a 200-room wood frame hotel from start to finish under good conditions. Once the materials were here and the workers were here in the spring of 87, this contract, though very valuable, $250,000 to build a 200-room wood frame hotel in 87. That was a lot of money. But here's what they were asking. Instead of 9 to 11 months to build this hotel, the contract said the whole hotel had to be built in 90 days, 3 months. Oh, contractor saw it was the funniest thing they ever saw. Read it, tore it up, threw it away. That was a big joke. Building was booming in the Great Lakes. There's plenty of money, depot towns, any deep water port. No one picked up this contract. Young fellow built a couple of these cottages up here. Charles Caskey never built a building a fraction of this size. But he saw that $250,000. Oh, it just ate away at him. He did calculation after calculation. He was waiting for one of these bigger companies that built big buildings to build it. Oh, he just couldn't stand it. Finally, he was down in the Harbor Springs, Petoskey area building cottages. Finally, he put together a modest proposal and he sent it off to this company. The company was 3 transportation companies that built us. 2 railroads and a steamship navigation company, the big D&C line. Sent the letter off. Talked to one of his relatives this year, said he never thought in the world he would have a chance, a possibility of getting a contract. Sent his proposal off to the Mackinaw Island Hotel Company. Guess what? An express letter came back and they gave him the contract. Do you know why? He was the only one to bid on it. Yeah. Oh, some idiot's going to try it, you know. So he set up in the middle of the town above the bridge, St. Ignace, started milling this Michigan white pine, being drugged down from the Upper Peninsula. Couldn't mill it or move it fast enough. Here again, the program is to move as much of that lumber over here, to raft it here, float it here in the fall, let it sit through the winter, bring the men in the spring. Fall was miserable, cold, rainy, started freezing at night. The oxen were mired down. He said the roads that drug this white pine down from the upper peninsula turned into just muddy ditches, started freezing at night. He built a pole barn over one of his mills. There's a discrepancy to this day between the state and myself if any of these materials made it. I don't think any did. They think some did. We mutually agree that if some came, it was just a minimal amount that came over here. Winter came in early and hard, and he was just in trouble. I mean, he was in trouble. He knew physically you could not bring the material and the workers in the spring and have this hotel built. He had two options. Both of them were just flat out terrible options. One, forfeit the contract. Let's go over what he's done. He had spent the money to build this hotel, the deposit money they gave him for the materials. He had borrowed money from two banks against the contract to build this hotel. Now, he also had promised some very important people. There was 12 major investors to this hotel, one of which was George Pullman, his friend, that he could do something hadn't been done before. If he forfeited this contract, he still had to pay the money back, and his reputation would be ruined as a builder. The second option was just plain old dangerous, and that is hope for a hard winter. A winter where that lake freezes 5 miles between here and St. Ignace. The ice bridge, it can last a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months. You never know. Every now and then there's no ice bridge. Last year there was no ice bridge whatsoever. And wait for that lake to freeze and bring the lumber across the ice bridge. Sitting here again in this comfortable room, can you imagine the first two guys and a load of lumber and a team of horses coming across 5 miles of frozen lake to make it to this island? Now, this is our 125th anniversary this year, and I've had some really cool historical moments. But one of my favorites, I was doing a little program down in St. Ignace, or in Sheboygan, and during the course of the festival, they also were celebrating this lady's 86th birthday. She wonderful, sharp lady. She played a little piano song, and after it was over, I was getting ready to leave, and this lady comes to me, and she says, "Mr. Tex, could I have just a minute of your time? I listened to your lecture." I go, "Thanks," and she goes, "My grandfather was one of the men who towed that across the lake." And she said, he told me story after story. And we sat down and we spent a lot of time together. And my favorite story, she said, was that what her grandfather said, when the men came across that lake, they didn't speak. Because they listened to every hoof drop, because every crack in that ice was crack, 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 crack. They were just waiting for the big crack. And the big crack, you did not survive. You lost your horses, the men, the lumber. And they brought that stuff across 24 hours a day and night, torches across the lake. They put a makeshift stable in the center of the lake so they could switch teams of horses, so a fresh team could come from the island, a spent team could go back to St. Ignace. And this whole hotel was drug across the lake. 1,500,000 board feet of lumber. We had no place to put it. They cleared out our tea garden down there. They ran out of space, so it grew into a single pile. It grew. When a third of the lumber was here, it already breached the top of the bluff. They had no place to go but up. Workers spent their whole day on the top of this stack of lumber. One row came like this. The second row came like that, till this entire hotel was in a single pile. It almost touched the height of the hotel today. We were a tourist attraction before we even opened. People take horses and carriages to Mackinaw City. 7 miles across from Mackinaw City, you could see this pile of lumber sticking out of this island with a naked eye across the lake. It was a joke. From Sault Ste. Marie, Canada to Cleveland, Ohio, newspapers, Caskey's folly, this idiot that was going to come in the spring with an army of workers and try to build an open, running hotel in 90 days. No one fell through the ice. First miracle. Second miracle, getting laborers. Where are you going to get them? The building is booming all over the place. He ended up having to send out agents. He figured he'd need about 200 to 300 workers under good conditions. He would go as high as 400 workers. I mean, that was, the island population was less than 100 at the time. So he said 400, where people were astounded. Before he finished this hotel, he had 600 laborers on this thing. And to make him come out here, to give him an incentive, he had to pay double wages. So this poor man was planning on a workforce of 400 and a payroll of 400. He now has a workforce of 600 and a payroll of 1,200. Big chunk of his profit, had to do it, made these promises. Lo and behold, getting the workers out here. Spring thaw comes. These workers are coming across. It's a little boat called the Tomcat. And let me tell you, for you guys not around here, when I talk about spring here, I ain't talking about bluebirds and warm breezes here. The island's still frozen. There's snowing. Downtown's pretty much closed. These workers were none too happy when they got to this project. They walked up the hill. The fort over here, the golf course over there was our cow pasture. So they put up a tent village right amongst the cows. 3 chuck wagons. The food had frozen solid in the barrels. And these poor workers, visualize this. They're from little bitty towns in northern Michigan, upper Michigan. They looked to the left and saw this pile of lumber. According to Mr. Caskey, the majority of his workers had never even seen a building that big. Never mind build a bigger building out. And a wave of unhappiness goes through this workforce. They knew pardon me, they knew the money, the power, and the backers behind this hotel. And they knew that there's no way this man could assemble another workforce. And it didn't hurt a bit that Cornelius Vanderbilt had just bought Michigan Central Railroads. By default, he became our single largest investor. They saw the Vanderbilt name, they went up to Mr. Caskey, and they asked for triple wages. He was beside himself. He said, you guys signed contracts. You knew the scope of the building, the size of the work. I'm paying twice the wages anybody's paying in the Great Lakes. How can you stand in front of me, a man that's been more than fair to you people, and ask for triple wages? And they said, oh, because we can't. You'll write letters and money will rain from heaven upon us. And he said, what are you going to do if I can't pay you triple wages? Oh, they were all smug. Oh, we're going on strike. They had him. Let me go over the pressure he was under so you understand about what's to happen here. Mr. Caskey, again, had closed his home building business for a year. He had no money, no income. He had borrowed money from 2 banks against the project. He drug all this green and milled green Michigan white pine from the Upper Peninsula in the fall. He risked life and limb to get it across that ice bridge. He had promised some very important people, including the Vanderbilts, the Pullmans, other transportation people, that he could do something that hadn't been done before. Let me tell you the real pressure Charles Caskey was under. You guys ready for this? The company that built this hotel had already advertised rooms for rent for the season. Yeah, can you imagine? You know, right as a lake view? Not yet. We're working on it. We're hoping. So far, there's no views, but we're trying. You know. So he said, "What?" He was beside himself. He said, "What are you going to do if I can't pay triple wages?" And they said, "We're going on strike." He called their bluff. Probably the gutsiest guy I ever heard on this island. He said, "Do not." He said, "Do not threaten to strike." He said, "You're on strike. None of you work for me." He said, "I've started from nothing before, and I'll just start from nothing again before I'll work with a group of 600 workers that are blackmailing me before the first nail is driven." He says, "Do me a favor, ex-employee. Due to your threat, no. Due to your greed, you go down and tell there's about 400 workers here huddled